All right. Hi, guys. Good to see everyone. Not that I see you, but hey. So today's challenge in recording has been that today has been moving day. So people have been coming in and coming out, and I tried recording outside on my porch, and every 5 minutes somebody's yelling outside, right? And my porch is on ground level. Somebody is screaming, I need this box, I need that box. I tried recording 4 times. I had to cut it out each time. Finally, I gave up, and when the bungalow got quiet, I came in here to make the recording in here, and I remembered to lock the door, so hopefully nobody walks in and interrupts us. So let's give it a shot. So, we're continuing our share in Dirshu B'Halacha. We're holding on Reish Mem Daled Amud Aleph. We're in Siman Shin Ayin Daled, and we are up to Seif Gimel. I'm going to dive right into the halacha today instead of starting with Pirkei Avos, because I want to try to make up for some lost time. I want to make up some ground. I want to try to finish Siman Shin Ayin Daled today. Now, before I even begin reading the Mechaber to you, I want to make sure that everybody understands the case that we're going to be dealing with. If you take a look in my Mishnah Berurah, there is a picture at the end of Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Yud Zayin. Now, I notice that in the Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, the picture is not in the Mishnah Berurah itself. It's at the bottom of the page. So if you look at the bottom of Reish Mem Daled Amud Aleph, I don't care which one of these 2 pictures you use, either number 1 or number 2. In either one of those pictures, you get the gist of what we're talking about. We're dealing with a case over here where we have 2 chatzerim that are next to each other. 2 chatzerim are right next to each other. So I always use the example, colony A and colony B. Usually when we picture that case, we picture 2 chatzerim that are the same size, and a wall divides them. That's not the case over here. Over here, chatzer A is smaller than chatzer B. So chatzer A is over here like this, chatzer B is over here like this. So chatzer A and chatzer B are right alongside each other, but chatzer B is bigger than chatzer A. Okay, now, there was a wall that divided chatzer A from chatzer B. So the opening from chatzer A to chatzer B was closed off with a wall. However, at some time before Shabbos, that opening became breached. And now the small chatzer is completely opened to the large chatzer. Alright? So now, again, you have the small chatzer is completely opened. What do I mean completely opened? From one end of the small chatzer to the other end of the small chatzer, it's completely opened to the bigger chatzer. Now, what's interesting about this case is that from the perspective of the small chatzer, when you look from the small chatzer to the big chatzer, it's completely opened. But when you look from the big chatzer to the small chatzer, it is not completely opened. What do I mean by that? It is completely opened, but when you're standing in the big chatzer and you look from the big chatzer into the small chatzer, you could see the gifufim. That those are the remnants of the walls on the 2 sides of the small chatzer. What do I mean? If you look at the picture at the bottom of the page, right? So you see the small chatzer, but the big chatzer has side walls that go to the opening of the small chatzer. And when you're standing in the big chatzer and you look from the big chatzer to the small chatzer, you could see those walls. I'm standing in the big chatzer. Now, the big chatzer has side walls that go along, and then they turn in until they hit the small chatzer. Then they turn and they go to the small chatzer. So if I'm standing inside the big chatzer and I'm looking to the small chatzer, I see those side walls. Now those side walls are from the big chatzer, right? The big chatzer walls go like this, then they turn and they go like this. I'm seeing that wall when I'm standing in the big chatzer. So from the perspective of the big chatzer, it looks like there are walls closing down the small chatzer. Now, they're not really closing down the small chatzer, because the small chatzer is only as wide as the opening. So those walls are not closing off the small chutzner, they're closing off what's outside the walls of the small chutzner. But again, from my perspective, inside the big chutzner, I see walls. However, if I'm standing in the small chutzner, and I'm looking from the small chutzner to the big chutzner, I don't see that. Now I'm in the small chutzner. My walls go like this, and then they turn and they go out like that. I can't see those side pieces. Those are on the outside of my walls. They're outside of the walls of my chutzner. I can't see those side walls that are over there. So from my perspective, in the small chutzner, I am nifratz b'miluai. I am completely breached to the big chutzner. It's very important to keep that in mind, because a lot of the halach is going to be based on that fact. Now let's take a look at what the Mechaber says. Chatzar Ketana. We have a small chatzar, shenifratza kaidem Shabbos b'milua, that became completely breached before Shabbos. This didn't happen on Shabbos. This happened before the onset of Shabbos. Ligedola. So the small chatzar is now completely breached to the big chatzar. The wall that separated it from the big chutzner fell down completely. So again, the small chutzner, the opening of the small chutzner, is completely breached to the big chutzner. Ve'ein b'pirtza yoiser me'eser amos. And that opening is not more than 10 amos wide. And we'll see why that's important. The halacha is, gedola muteres lahitzi kelim sheshavsu babayis lachatzera. We're assuming over here, like the Mechaber is about to say, that each one of these chatzerim made their own individual erev. Let's remember, originally there was a wall separating these two chatzerim. So on Wednesday, they made an erev, and Chatzer A, the small Chatzer, made its own erev to allow you to carry a Keli Sheshavas Babayis into their Chatzer. Chatzer B made their own erev to allow transferring inside their Chatzer. They had to make two separate eruvin because there was a wall separating the two Chatzerim. That was on Wednesday. So on Wednesday they went there and they made their erev. They're two separate eruvin. Now on Friday morning the wall fell down. And now the small Chatzer is completely breached to the big Chatzer. So the Mechaber says, in this scenario, excuse me, Gedola muteres lahitzi kelim sheshavsu babayis lachatzera im erva la'atzma. The big Chatzer remains mutter because of their erev. They made an erev that allows transferring a keli sheshavas babayis to their own Chatzer. They made their own individual erev. Their erev remains in play. Uketana asura la'itzi kelim sheshavsu babayis lachatzera. However, the small Chatzer is going to be aser. In the small Chatzer, you're not going to be allowed to transfer a Keli Sheshavas Babayis to the Chatzer, even though they made their own Erev. Ela imkein ervu yachat. The only way the small Chatzer is going to be mutter is if the small Chatzer joined in a combined Erev with the big Chatzer. Then it would be okay. But if they never combined in a joint combined Erev with the big Chatzer, they only have their own individual Erev. Their own individual Erev is not valid. Now what's the explanation of this? The explanation of this is as follows. Chatzer A is the big Chatzer. They made their own Erev. Chatzer B is the small Chatzer. They made their own Erev. Again, they each made their own Erev because there was a mechitza that was separating them. The mechitza fell down before Shabbos. Now it's Shabbos. How do we look at this scenario? So, the way we look at it is as follows. Chatzer A, the big Chatzer, is not nifratz b'miluai to the Chatzer Ketana. It's not seen as being completely breached to Chatzer B. It's not seen as being completely breached to the small Chatzer. Why? The reason is because, like I told you at the outset, when you look from the big Chatzer into the small Chatzer, you see the gifufim. You see the side walls that come in and narrow the opening of the Chatzer to the small Chatzer. You see those side walls. So when you want to go from Chatzer A, from the big Chatzer, to Chatzer B, to the small Chatzer, you have those side walls coming in. So it doesn't seem to be completely breached from the big chutzner to the small chutzner. Also, the Mechaber was very careful to say that the opening from the big chutzner to the small chutzner is less than 10 amas. If it was more than 10 amas, then it would constitute a breach. But since it's less than 10 amas, it constitutes a pesach. It's a doorway. So, since the big chutzner has a doorway to the small chutzner, the big chutzner has their options. They could join with one combined Eruv with the smaller chutzner, or they could have separate Eruvin. They could have their own separate Eruv. In our case, they made their own separate Eruv. Their own separate Eruv is valid because they're not breached to another chutzner. They have a Pesach to another chutzner. So the big chutzner is going to remain mutter by virtue of the fact that they have their own individual Eruv. But now let's flip it around. Now let's look at it from the perspective of the small chutzner. The small chutzner made their own individual Eruv. But the problem is that the small chutzner is completely breached. It's nifratz b'miluoi to the big chutzner. Because when you're going from the small chutzner to the big chutzner, you don't see any side walls. The side walls of your chutzner come straight like this. Then they go out like that on the outside. You can't see those pieces. You see straight ahead into the big chutzner. So even though the opening from the small chutzner to the big chutzner excuse me, is less than 10 amas wide, but it's nifratz b'miluai. It's completely opened. And since it's nifratz b'miluai, that constitutes a pirza, that constitutes a breach. They are seen as being one with the big chutzner, so they can't make their own individual Eruv, and that's what they did. They made their own individual Eruv on Wednesday, but that individual Eruv is now invalidated. So now that it's Shabbos, and all they have is that invalid individual Eruv, they can't carry a Keli Sheshavas Babayis from one of their houses in their chutzner to their chutzner. They certainly can't go from one of the houses in their chutzner to the other chutzner. That they certainly can't do, because they're not combined with the other chutzner. That's the gist of this halacha, and the rest of the Seif is going to throw in some other complications. But before we see those complications, let's see the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Yud. The Mishnah Berurah says, the Mechaber said, I'm sorry, the Mechaber said, Chatzar Ktana, we have over here a Chatzar, Shenifritza Koidim Shabbos. The Mechaber said that there was a wall, and before Shabbos, the wall that was closing up the opening from the small chutzner to the big chutzner became breached. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Yud, Shenifritza Kaidim Shabbos. It was breached before Shabbos. Says the Chavetz Chaim, the Ilu B'Shabbos, if the breach took place on Shabbos, then we wouldn't have this issue. Then we would go back to what we said in Sif Katan Aleph, in Sif Aleph, in the Mechaber. Dilu B'Shabbos, if the breach happened on Shabbos, Amrinon Kevin Shahutra Hutra. We would say that everything remains mutter. Even the small chutzner is going to remain mutter. Because Kevin Shahutra B'Tchila Shabbos, Hutra L'Chala Shabbos. Kevin Shahutra Hutra. But this happened before Shabbos. And what happened? The small chutzner was nifratz b'milua l'gedola. It was completely breached to the big chutzner. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nice Katan Yud Aleph Ritzayna Loimar. What the Mechaber means to say is, Shayu smuchin zeh lozeh. These two chatzerim are exactly next to each other. V'kaisol mafsik beinehen, and there was a wall separating the two. V'nifratz kol ha'kaisol hazeh, and the entire wall that was closing off the small chutzner to the big chutzner fell down. Ois Katan Yud Beis. Ve'ein ba'pirtza yoser me'eser amos. But this breach, the opening from the small chutzner to the big chutzner, is less than 10 amos wide. Why is that important? Says the Chavetz Chaim, Di'ilu yoser me'asara, and l'chayre this should be eser, not asara. Di'ilu yoser me'eser, if the opening would be wider than 10 amos, loy shayich loymar diktani hi kepischa shel gdola. Then we would not be able to say that the opening from the small chutzner to the big chutzner is a Pesach. Remember, what we're going to say over here is that transferring inside the big chutzner is going to be mutter, because the opening from the big chutzner to the small chutzner is only seen as a Pesach. It's not seen as a breach. it's seen as a doorway. But if that opening would be more than 10 amas wide, then we cannot see it as a Pesach. Then it's too big for a Pesach, then it becomes a pirza, it becomes a breach, and then this halacha wouldn't be true. Then transferring inside the big chutzner would also be usher, because even though the big chutzner is not nifratz b'miluoi liktana, even though it's not completely breached to the ktana, because you have the gifufim, you have those side walls, but it doesn't matter that it's not nifratz b'miluoi, it's still nifratz, it's still a breach because it's too big to be a Pesach. Once you get bigger than 10 amas, it's a pirza, it's a breach, it's not a Pesach, and then you're not seen as being two separate chatzerim. So the ilu yoiser meyeser loy shaykh loymar diktani kepischa shel gdoila. Then you would not be able to say that the opening from the large chatzer to the small chatzer is a Pesach. The pischa yoiser meyeser amos loyavdi inchi, because people do not make doorways that are greater than 10 amas. What's the halacha in this case? The Mechaber said, Gedoyla muteres, says the Chavetz Chaim and Ois Katan Yud Gimel, ve'ein aktana oiseres aleh. Now the big chutzner is going to remain mutter. You're going to be allowed to transfer even a keli shashavas babayis in the big chutzner from the bayis to the chutzner. Ve'ein aktana oiseres aleh. And the small chutzner is not going to make the big chutzner aser. The ha'hagdoyla yesh la gifufin. And the explanation of this is because the big chutzner has side walls that you see from inside the big chutzner. It has those gifufin, it has those side walls that narrow the opening to go to the small chutzner. Those gifufin are seen as being partial walls of the opening to the small chutzner. Since those partial walls are there, it's not nifratz b'miluoi. And since it's less than 10 amas, it's a Pesach, not a breach. The big chutzner has side walls that close down the opening going to the small chutzner. And now the opening that goes from the big chutzner to the small chutzner is considered to be a Pesach, is considered to be a doorway, not a breach, and they're allowed to have their own separate Erev, and the big chutzner does indeed have their own separate Erev. Their Erev remains in place, and it's mutter for them lahaitzi kelim sheshavsu babayis, to transfer even a keli sheshavas babayis in the big chutzner from the bayis to the chutzner. Ois Katan Yudalid lahaitzi kelim sheshavsu babayis. So the Chavetz Chaim points out, why does the Mechaber stress over here that it remains mutter to transfer a keli sheshavas babayis to the chutzner? The ilu kelim sheshavsu b'chutzner, because if we're dealing with the keli sheshavas b'chutzner, mutter lechatchila lahaitzi af lechutzner acheres. That you're allowed to do even from the big chutzner to the small chutzner. You don't need an erev for that. You want to take a lawn chair that started out Shabbos inside the chutzner, so fine, you could take it. You could take it over to the other chutzner even without a combined erev. You don't need an erev for that. I feel like erev. You don't need to join in an erev for that. That's what we said in the beginning of Shinai and Beis. Okay, this whole halacha is true. Ois Katan Tezvav im erva la'atzma. If the big chutzner has its own individual erev. Avalim loy erva, if the big chutzner doesn't have its own individual erev, af hi asura, then of course transferring a keli sheshavas babayis from the bayis to the chutzner is going to be asur even in the big chutzner, because they don't have an erev. You have to have an erev. Ukitana asura, however, this kind of transferring is going to be asur in the small chutzner. Ois Katan Tezayin. Why? Because its wall, the wall that separated it from the big chutzner, nifritza b'milua l'gedola, it's now completely breached to the big chutzner. Shehi makayma aserla, and the big chutzner is going to aser on the small chutzner. So again, I just want to be very, very clear over here. What is the root of the issue over here? We have two separate chatzerim. We have chutzner A, which is the big chutzner. We have chutzner B, which is the small chutzner. The problem over here is that the small chutzner is seen as being completely breached to the big chutzner. There is no Pesach between the small chutzner and the big chutzner. There's a breach. It's completely open to the big chutzner. What's the halacha when you have two chatzerim that are completely open one to the other? they must make a joint combined Eruv. They're not allowed to make two separate Eruvin. How can I make it a separate Eruv? I'm completely open to you. It would be like one big chutzner where half of the residents made their own Eruv and half of the residents made their own Eruv. That doesn't work. And in this case over here, the small chutzner is seen as being completely breached to the big chutzner. Why? Because there are no gifufin. There are no partial walls separating the small chutzner from the big chutzner. When you look from the small chutzner to the big chutzner, it's a complete breach. It's wide open. The whole opening of the small chutzner is wide open to the big chutzner. They can't make their own Eruv. They made their own Eruv on Wednesday, but they're not allowed to do that. So their Eruv is completely ineffectual, and transferring a Keli Shashavas Babayis to the chutzner in their chutzner is going to be aser. But in the big chutzner, it's going to be mutter. The reason it's going to be mutter in the big chutzner is because the big chutzner is not seen as being completely breached to the small chutzner. Why not? Because going from the big chutzner to the small chutzner, there are gifufin. There are side walls that you see when you walk from the big chutzner to the small chutzner. Now, those side walls are not truly closing the opening. The opening is completely open. What are the side walls closing? The side walls are closing that you cannot walk outside of the big chutzner to go behind the walls of the small chutzner. So it's not really separating from the big chutzner to the small chutzner, but visually and spatially, when you look from the big chutzner to the small chutzner, you see walls. So since there are walls over there, those walls are considered a break. Those walls are considered partial walls. So now the big chutzner is not seen as being completely breached to the small chutzner. The big chutzner is seen as having a doorway to the small chutzner. Since they have a doorway and not a breach, they could make their own Eruv. And they did make their own Eruv. So by them transferring a Keli Shashavas Babayis from the bias to the chutzner is going to be mutter. Now, we don't have to tell you that transferring a Keli that started out Shabbos in the chutzner is mutter. That you're certainly allowed to do. That you're always allowed to do, even without an Eruv. Okay, so that's just, it's a little bit complicated. I just wanted to make sure everybody has it straight, and that's why I keep repeating myself over here. I hope you're patient. Okay. Now we go weiter. Okay, now let's go back into the Mechaber. Now, the Mechaber, right, we did all the Mishnah Berurah, yeah. Okay, now we're up to the Mechaber. By me, it's 4 lines off the bottom. It's right by the Ois Katan Yud Zayin for the Mishnah Berurah. Now the Mechaber is just going to throw in a couple of caveats over here. So, by way of Hakdama, by way of preface, there is a concept, we've had this concept before, which is the concept of nira mi bachutz v'shaveh mi bifnim. When a wall could be seen from the outside, nira mi bachutz, you could see it from the outside, v'shaveh mi bifnim, but it's straight and equal from the inside. You cannot see the wall from the inside. Such a wall that's nira mi bachutz v'shaveh mi bifnim, is considered halachically to be an effectual wall. Now, that throws a loop into what we just said. You see, the problem is, we said that the gifufin, those side walls that you could see from the big chutzner, they're effective for the big chutzner. They allow the Eruv of the big chutzner to remain in place, but they're not effective for the small chutzner. The problem with that is that the concept of nira mi bachutz v'shaveh mi bifnim says otherwise. That concept says, since the walls are nira mi bachutz, since you could see those walls from outside of the small chutzner, right? You could see them when you're in the big chutzner. You could also see those walls if you're outside both chatzerim. If you're outside, on the outside of both chatzerim, you could see those walls. So those walls are nira mi bachutz. You could see them from the outside. Now, they're shaveh mi bifnim. When you're inside the small chutzner, you can't see them. Because when you're inside the small chutzner, all you see are the side walls of your chutzner, left and right. You're in the small chutzner. I see the left wall of my chutzner. I see the right wall of my chutzner. I see them hit the big chutzner, and I see them end. I can't see where they turn. So they're not so the walls of my chutzner are shaveh mi bifnim. They're straight from the inside. I can't see those side walls, but those side walls are nireh mi bachutz. They're visible from the big chutzner or from outside the chatzerim. Over there they are visible. Now, the concept of nireh mi bifnim v'shaveh mi bachutz says that those are effective walls, even though I can't see them. So why don't we say that those gifufin should be effective for the small chutzner the same way they're effective for the big chutzner? That's the problem that the Mechaber is going to deal with over here. The way the Mechaber is going to answer this problem is, he's going to say that we have to be talking about a case where the side walls of the small chutzner, the left wall and the right wall, they do not end at the opening to the big chutzner. It's not that they end at the opening to the big chutzner and then they turn and go outwards, so that there's a corner over there. If that was the way the chutzner was designed, then you would be right. Then we would say that the gifufim are nireh mi bachutz, they're visible for the outside, they're shaveh mi bifnim, and they're effective. But that's not what happened over here. Over here, the left wall and the right wall of the small chutzner, they continue into the big chutzner. They don't end at the opening to the big chutzner. They keep on going, and they protrude somewhat into the big chutzner so that they bisect the gifufin. So the left wall, let's say, of the small chutzner goes like this. Here you have the side wall that, where the wall would have turned to make the big chutzner bigger. But that wall bisects the left wall of the small chutzner. So the small chutzner continues. Now you can actually see this. I sent you to the picture, or you could look in the Dirshu in diagram 15. In footnote 15, there's a diagram. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about either over there or in one of the pictures at the bottom of the page. Again, either number 1 or number 2. Frankly, I'm not seeing the difference between number 1 and number 2 at all. I don't know why there are 2 pictures. But in either one of these pictures, in footnote 15, you could see that the wall from the small chutzner doesn't make a right angle turn where the next chutzner becomes bigger. It continues straight. There is a wall that closes off that opening. So the gifufim do go inwards to make the smaller chutzner smaller than the big chutzner. But the side wall of the small chutzner bisects it. And the side wall keeps on going straight. How does that help? The reason that helps, the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, is because then we cannot say that it's nireh mi bachutz v'shaveh mi bifnim. The point of nireh mi bachutz v'shaveh mi bifnim is, since I see the gifufin on the outside, it looks like those gifufin are partial walls narrowing down the opening from the big chutzner to the small chutzner. So like I've said already 100 times, from the perspective of the big chutzner, it looks like there are partial walls. But that's not true if the side walls of the small chutzner come into the big chutzner and bisect those gifufim. Because then those gifufim are not seen as narrowing down the opening. The opening is closed off by that side wall of the small chutzner. There's no partial wall that closes off the opening to the small chutzner. That would have to be inside of the side wall. The gifufin are on the outside of the side wall. So now we can no longer say nireh mi bifnim, nireh mi bachutz v'shaveh mi bifnim, and that's why those gifufim are not effective for the small chutzner. I wish I could see your faces. I wish we were face to face, because then I would see very clearly whether you're following me or not. By this time you might be getting frustrated with me. Why does he keep on repeating this? But I can't see your faces, and I can't entertain questions, and I miss you all. But that's what makes it hard, and that's why I keep repeating myself. Now let's see the Mechaber inside. So in the Mechaber, right by the ice cut in Yud Zayin to the Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber says, V'hainu, here's the caveat. V'hainu, this whole halacha is true, Kishenichnasin kaslei ktana l'gedola, when the side walls of the small chutzner protrude into the large chaser. And then another caveat, ukishekosle ktana muflogim shloisha tfachim mikosle orech hagdola. The other caveat is that those side walls of the small chutzner that continue into the big chutzner, where they continue into the big chutzner, they have to be more than 3 tfachim removed from the side walls of the big chutzner. The big chutzner is surrounded by its own side walls. Now, when the side walls of the chutzner ktana, of the small chutzner, go into the big chutzner, they are now within the airspace of the walls of the big chutzner. Those side walls of the small chutzner have to be more than 3 tfachim removed from the side walls of the big chutzner that are alongside them. Why? Because if they would be within 3 tfachim of the side walls of the big chutzner, then we would say lavud. We would say it's as if they're equal with the side walls of the big chutzner, and then we would say it's as if we do not have them at all, and then they're not bisecting the gifufin. And if they're not bisecting the gifufin, then our original problem comes back. Then we have nira mibachutz v'shaveh mibifnim. But since they're more than 3 tvachim removed from the side walls of the bigger chutzner, we cannot say lavud. Now they bisect the gifufin, and now we cannot say nira mibachutz v'shaveh mibifnim. So kishekos like Tana, this is only when the side walls of the small chutzner, where they extend into the big chutzner, muflogim shloisha tvachim mikasle arach hagdola, they have to be removed by 3 tvachim from the side walls of the bigger chutzner. De'im loikein, because if you didn't have either one of these caveats, haisa ketana niteres, then transferring a keli sheshavas babayis to the chutzner in the small chutzner, niteres would be mutter al yedei nira mibachutz v'shaveh mibifnim, because of the concept of nira mibachutz v'shaveh mibifnim. Now let's see the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut in your Zion. Now the Mishnah Berurah is going to speak out everything that I've tried so hard to explain over here. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut in your Zion. V'hainu, we have these 2 caveats. Ritzaynoi loymar, what the Mechaber means to say is, Eimosai haktana asura, when is this halacha true, that transferring in the small chutzner is going to be asur? Bekishekasalea nichnasin uboltin l'saych hagdola, when the side walls of the small chutzner go in and extend into the big chutzner, beshtayim v'shalosh amos, for a distance of 2 or 3 amos, kazeh, like the picture. By me, the picture is inside the text of the Mishnah Berurah itself. In the Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, it's at the bottom of the page, either picture 1 or picture 2. Now, in Dirshu footnote 14, they take great issue with the fact that the Chavetz Chaim said over here that the side walls of the small chutzner have to extend 2 or 3 amos into the big chutzner. They bring down a Prima Gadim. The Prima Gadim says, where did this come from? Where does this halacha come from that the side walls have to extend 2 or 3 amos into the big chutzner? It makes sense to say, and we're very eloquently explained why they have to extend into the big chutzner, because they have to bisect the gifufin. But why 2 or 3 amos? Where does this shear of 2 or 3 amos come from? And the Prima Gadim says he doesn't know. The Prima Gadim says that really it shouldn't be 2 or 3 amos. Really it should be, I'm just looking, where did the Mishnah Berurah pull it from? Shar Tzion Cotton Yud Beis, Rashi Daf Tes. He brings it from Rashi in Eruvin. Prima Gadim says, I don't know where Rashi got this from. What's the yachas? What's the significance of 2 or 3 amos? That it has to extend 2 or 3 amos. Prima Gadim says, Pashtus, it doesn't have to extend 2 or 3 amos. You should say that it has to extend more than 3 tfachim. Because if it was less than 3 tvachim, then maybe we would say lavud, and we would say it's as if they don't extend into the big chutzner at all. We would say maybe it's considered to be straight with the gifufin, and it's as if it makes a right angle turn with the gifufin. Chazon Ish says that they don't even have to go in 3 tvachim, they just have to go in a mashahu. As long as they extend a little bit beyond the gifufin into the chutzner gdaila, that would be enough. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Yud Ches. The second caveat was that the side walls of the Chatzar Ktana, right, the side walls of the Chatzar Ktana go into the Chatzar Gdoila. They have to be at least 3 tvachim removed from the side walls of the Gdoila. So the side walls of the Ktana come in over here, your Gifufin are over here, and the side walls of the Gdoila are out here. So the side walls of the Ktana that go into the Gdoila have to be at least 3 amas away from the side walls of the Gdoila that are alongside them, enclosing the Gdoila. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Yud Ches, Dahainu mekayim knisas bechitzay saktana, where the extension of the side walls of the Ktana go in, maflagos mikaslei oirach hagdoila shebetzida. They have to be removed from the side walls of the bigger chutzner that are alongside them. Why do they have to be at least 3 tvachim removed? Because if not, we would join the side walls of the Ktana to the side walls of the Gdoila by virtue of lavud. And then it would be as if they're not there. The reason we have these 2 caveats, the reason that the side walls of the Ktana have to go into the Gdoila, and the reason why they have to be removed at least 3 tvachim from the side walls of the Gdoila is because if not, then transferring in the small chutzner would also be mutter. Ritzaynai Loimar, the Chavetz Chaim says, what the Mechaber means to say over here is, if the walls of the Chatzar Ktana would not extend into the Gdoila, then even the Chatzar Ktana would be mutter. Because even though from the inside of the small Chatzar we do not see Gifufin, we can't see those Gifufin from inside the Ktana, somebody standing inside the Ktana sees his walls going straight until they end at the opening to the Gdoila. And there would be nothing closing off the opening, going into the opening from the Ktana to the Gdoila at all. So the breach is for the entire width of the opening. But from the outside, from the perspective of the big chutzner, we see partial walls from the perspective of the big chutzner because we can see the gifufim. Where the walls go out to make the big chutzner bigger, those gifufim can be seen from inside the big chutzner. We see those from inside the big chutzner. V'niteres bahem. And the big chutzner is mutter because of those gifufim. Tishtiri gam aktana. So now the ktana should also be mutter by virtue of those partial walls because of the concept of nira mibachos v'shava mibifnim. Ma she'ein kein. However, when the side walls of the Chatzar Ktana extend into the Chatzar Gdoila, nicker, it is now obvious that those partial walls, those gifufim, which are on the outside of the opening from the small chutzner to the big chutzner, ein shayachla. They have nothing to do with the opening from the small chutzner to the big chutzner. They can't be seen as closing off that opening because even from the perspective of the big chutzner, we don't see them as narrowing down the opening because they're bisected by the side walls of the Chatzar Ktana. And I'm not going to go into it again because it's already too much repetition. Okay, now in Sif Daled, we're really just going to see another manifestation of this same exact halacha. And I'll explain it to you outside before we say it inside. We just spoke over here of a Chatzar Gdoila and a Chatzar Ktana. I want you to imagine the same exact case, but instead of a Chatzar Gdoila and a Chatzar Ktana, we're going to have a Gag Gadol, a big roof, and a Gag Katan, a small roof. So, we have 2 buildings that are right next to each other. One building is 20 amas by 30 amas by 30 amas. Right next to it, there's another building that building is only 15 amas by 15 amas. And the two buildings are touching each other. So guess what? We have big roof and small roof in the exact same scenario as big chutzner and small chutzner. Now, we know already from past experience that when we're dealing with a rooftop, we consider a rooftop to be fenced in. Even if there are no mechitzos, even if there is no fence around the rooftops, because of good asik mechitzasa, we say that the side walls of the buildings continue up. So now, I want you to imagine that you're standing on top of one of these roofs. Because of good asik mechitzasa, we say that the roofs are fenced in. So guess what? These rooftops are exactly the same as a chatzar gdola and the chatzar ktana that we just spoke about. Even though there are no fences on top of the roofs, but because of good asik mechitzasa, we say that there are fences. So now, if you're standing on the small rooftop is considered to be completely breached to the big rooftop. If you're standing on the big rooftop is not considered to be completely breached to the small rooftop, because where the big rooftop turns and goes in, becomes narrower until it hits the small rooftop, right? Those are the gifufim. Those are now partial walls, and now the breach going to the small rooftop, it's not a complete breach. We have the small rooftop. So guess what? To transfer a keli shashavas babayis, if you want to take a chair from inside your building and take it up onto your roof, if your roof is adjoining another roof, you need an eruv chatzeros. You have to join with your neighbor in an eruv chatzeros. Now let's say you did not join with your neighbor in an eruv chatzeros, and you want to take a chair, you want to take a keli shashavas babayis that started off Shabbos in your house, and you want to take it up to the roof. If you don't have an eruv chatzeros with your neighbor, you cannot do that, right? But if you, in this case, you can, if you're the big roof. Because since you're the big roof, you're considered to have a pesach between your big roof and the small roof, because of the gifufim. But if you're the small roof, you have a problem, because you don't have a pesach to the big roof, you have a breach to the big roof. Says the Mechaber in Siv Dalet, Gag Katan, if you have a small roof, Shenifratz Kaidim Shabbos b'miluay legag gadol, which is completely breached to the big roof, like we just explained. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to say that the wording of the Mechaber is imprecise. It's not nifratz. It's not that there was a wall between the big roof and the small roof. There was never a wall between the big roof and the small roof. This is just a scenario. There is no fence between the two rooftops, so they're wide open one to the other. Katan asar la'alais alav kelim sheshavsu babayis. You're not allowed to take a chair from inside the house of the small house and bring it up onto the roof of the small house, because its roof is completely breached to the bigger roof. V'gadol mutter, but by the big house you're allowed to. Now, the caveat over here is, V'hu sheyiyu mechitzas habayis nikarais lemisha omer al agad. We have said previously, when do you say god asik mechitzasa? You only say god asik mechitzasa if the roof line of the house does not extend beyond the wall line. If the outer wall of the building is bisected by the roof line, then you cannot continue the wall line up beyond the roof line, because it's cut off by the roof. If it's flush, or the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, even if it only extends a little bit, so that when you stand on the roof you could see the outside wall of the house, then we say god asik mechitzasa. So the Mechaber over here says, when is this true, that transferring from inside the big house is going to be mutter to the roof of the big house? That's true when by standing on the roof you could look down and see the outer wall of the house, because the roof doesn't extend over the wall. If you cannot see the outer wall of the house from the roof because the roof extends beyond the wall, have a carmelis. Then we said earlier in Shin Mem Hey, I believe it was, that the roof has a din of a carmelis. The roof is not a rishus hayachid because it's not surrounded by walls, because you can't say god asik mechitzasa. Ella im kain pasuach loy me'abayis chaloin arba al arba. Unless you have a trap door or a real door going from inside the building out onto the roof, and that doorway is at least 4 by 4. If it's 4 by 4, 1 second. Yeah, if it's 4 by 4, it's 4. It should be tfachim, I believe. If it's 4 by 4, so then that's considered like a doorway or a window that connects the rooftop to the interior of the building. The interior of the building is a rishus hayachid. Now the rooftop becomes chayrei rishus hayachid. It becomes like the holes that open up from the rishus hayachid that get a din of the rishus hayachid. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Ois katan chaf on Reish Mem Daled Amud Aleph. Gag katan. Avalim shnei gagin shavin. If you don't have a big roof and a small roof, if they're both the same, so then oisrin zelzeh, then obviously they're going to aser on each other. Afilu imeinam yoser me'aser amos, even if the opening from one roof to the other roof is not 10 amos wide. Daharei nifritzu b'miluan zelazeh. Doesn't matter if it's 10 amos wide. That let's say you have a 5 amma building and a 5 amma building, and nothing at all separating the two roofs. You don't need to have a 10 amma opening in order for it to be considered a breach. It's completely opened. There's nothing closing down that opening at all. So it's a complete breach. It's nifratz b'miluai. This rooftop belongs to Ruvain. This rooftop belongs to Shimon. You cannot transfer from one house to the other, or from one house, a keli sheshavas babayis, to the rooftop, which is like a chutzner, unless you're going to join in a combined eruv. Shenifratz is katan chaf aleph lav dafka. It's not that it became breached one roof to the other. Va'akavana sheyepasuach lagaga samachloi. One roof is just open to the other. The begagloi ayri b'shahayim etchila mechitza. We're not talking over here in a case where originally there was a wall. There was never a wall. V'nakat loshen nifratz. We use the word nifratz ID to Seif Gimel just to make it similar to what we said in Seif Gimel. Kaidim Shabbos, the Bish Shabbos, if a breach would take place on Shabbos, Arminim Kevichot Rahutra V'Chanal. Aiskan Chav Gimel b'miluay legagodol. The small roof is completely breached to the larger roof. Hainu shekol gaga cotton. The entire small roof, mechuven neged gaga godel, is right up next to the bigger roof, hasamachloi, that's right next to it. So you could walk completely from the small roof onto the bigger roof. It's not that one roof is offset from the other. Then it's not nifratz b'miluai to the other roof. And we're talking about a case where the two owners of the two buildings did not make a joint combined eruv. And the small roof is not more than 10 amos. If it was more than 10 amos, then it's a complete. Then the big roof is also seen as being completely breached to the small roof, and then transferring in the bigger building would also be aser. The chanal b'siv gimel. Cotton aser lahalois. You're not allowed to carry a keli sheshavas babayis in the small building up to its roof. Why? Because the small rooftop is completely breached to the big rooftop, which belongs to a different person. So it's a separate rishus hayachid. So that rishus hayachid asers on this rishus hayachid without a combined eruv. Sheshavsu babayis. We're talking about kelim sheshavsu babayis. Dilu kelim sheshavsu alagag. If you would be talking about a chair that was up on the roof from the outside of Shabbos, mutal taltalam afilu lagag chaveira b'lay eruv klal. You would be allowed to carry it from one roof to the other roof without an eruv at all. The chanal b'simin shinayin beis of aleph. V'gadol mutter. However, the big building is mutter lahaitzi klei abayis, to take even a keli sheshavas babayis al gagoy onto its rooftop. The gaga cotton legabon nechshav kepesach ba'alma, because as far as the big roof is concerned, it's not seen as being completely breached to the small rooftop. We look at it as if there's a pesach, there's a doorway between the big roof and the small roof. Because again, when you go from the big roof to the small roof, first the big roof narrows. Those good asik mechitzasa gifufin, right? Those side walls where the big roof becomes narrower are seen as being a partial doorway. So it's as if there's a pesach from the big roof to the small roof, and therefore they're okay with their eruv. Mechitzas habayis nikaros Shekal Gaga Shalen Chalakin Hoyu, their rooftops were flat, not sloped. If the wall doesn't, if the roof doesn't extend over the walls, somebody standing on the edge of the roof could look down and they could see the side walls of the house. Therefore, we say good asik. And now it's as if the rooftop is surrounded by mechitzos. But if the roof extends beyond the walls of the building, now you cannot see the outer walls of the house when you're standing on the rooftop. Now you don't say good asik. Now the rooftop has a din of a karmelis. Now you cannot carry on either one of the rooftops. Now carrying on the rooftop is going to be completely usher, even for a keli sheshavas alagag. You're not allowed to carry in a karmelis more than 4 amos, and the rooftops now have a din of a karmelis. Shahagag boilate. This is the din if the roof extends over the walls. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Dafka kishabaylet abat tvachim. Here we have a new rule in the Mishnah Berurah, that this din, that if the roof extends over the outer walls, you don't say good asik b'chitzasa. That's only if the roof extends at least 4 tvachim beyond the wall line. If it doesn't extend that far out, then we consider it as if they are. You do say good asik b'chitzasa because we consider it as if you can see the outer walls when you stand on the edge of the roof and look down. It's not a karmelis if there is a trapdoor going from the interior of the building to the roof, because then the roof becomes chayre rishus hayachid, that has a din of rishus hayachid. The mishtamshim by, if there's a trapdoor that you use, the nechshav kalagaki chayre rishus hayachid. When we come makom loy mahanizeh elo lahater lehishtamish al gagoy bekelim sheshavsu b'saychay. The only thing this accomplishes for you is if you have a keli sheshavas babayis, you can take it up onto the roof. The yeshalav al yidezeh shem rishus hayachid, because now the roof is a rishus hayachid. Aval lahalo yisol of kelim sheshavsu babayis. You want to take. This allows you to carry on the roof, but in order to be matir carrying a keli sheshavas babayis out onto the roof, aser calls man shalei ervu. You still need an erev yachad. You still have to make an erev with the neighboring property. Keven she'ena mechitzos nikarais alav. Okay, that concludes today's share and concludes Siman Shin Ayin Dalet. Be well.